Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Camilla Webster, and I'm joined today by author Stephen Haines, the author of The Product Manager's Desk Reference.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So why is a book like this so critical to the current business environment, and why are you doing this?
Thank you. I'm on a mission. It's really very, very simple. What I've noticed over the last 5 or 10 or even more years is that companies that are large, publicly traded, complex companies are under a lot of financial pressure. They're under pressure to produce results. And I think when they cut back on critical people, the people that they shouldn't be cutting back on are the people who have superior knowledge and experience in the organization. Drucker used to call them knowledge workers, and I think what they are strategic thinkers and business people. And so what I think is really important is to draw attention to the fact that we must cultivate these kinds of people. Now, if we don't have the resources inside of the company to cultivate those resources, where should those people go? What could they turn to? So they need a reliable resource, in my estimation, a real how-to reference that they can say, when I encounter this situation, all right, I don't know how to do an industry profile. What can I do? I don't have a way to analyze a competitive company. They can turn to a competitor dossier, literally a formatted template in the book that says, here are the things you need, here are the data you need to collect, here are the people you can talk to, and here's what one would look like if it were completed, and here's how you would apply it to creating your strategy.
It's like having Stephen Haines on call in your business full time.
I have to tell you, it's a funny story. I got this, an email recently, and the guy said, I just got done with one of your books. And I said, that's great, thank you so much. He says, it was like having you talk to me when, like you being in the room. So I thought it was really great. So
you produced a large desk reference. This is a second edition. How do I use this reference to help me succeed in business?
Let's look. I'm going to do a little history. The first thing is, where did it get born? It was born in my brain in 2006. And what had happened was I had come back from a client engagement. I had done a very comprehensive organizational diagnostic. I was able to kind of figure out where things were. And I actually went and ran a leadership workshop. And I had this sinking feeling in my gut that the bosses weren't going to do what was necessary or what was prescribed. And I started to really be troubled by this. And it's not the first time that I'd ever seen this behavior before. And I was on the plane coming back, and I started to think about things like, well, what about pilots or physicians or surgeons or lawyers? They practice their craft. They get really good at it. I also thought about, for instance, like the tradecraft analogy, where you have an apprentice person, a journey person, and a master person, if you will. And these are people who, again, they get better over periods of time. And I said, you know, there has got to be a place where business people can go who want to practice the art of product management. What should they look at? And what's interesting is that the role of the person in a company is driven by situations. You can't necessarily come to work with a plan every day and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If you encounter different situations and you haven't encountered it before, where could you go? And so the main idea behind the desk reference was find a place where people can go for a reliable resource that will help them how to do something at a given point when the need arises.
What do you think is the most important section of the book? What's that takeaway that you feel could really change the mind of a C-suite executive in a new direction?
Well, I think it's maybe not one section, but I think that there are 2 modules that are really, really important. One has to do with the person. All right, the person as a strategic thinker, the person as an internal entrepreneur, the person who is a critical thinker, the person who is a leader. These are the kinds of characteristics that separate a good business person from a not so good business person. So that's one important module. The second module is about market insight. All right, and it's something that really, really is important. In a lot of companies, there are people, there are salespeople, there are developers, there are service people, there are bosses, there are customers, and everybody's banging down the door and asking for help or adding a feature or something like that. Well, if you don't have proper market insights, it's impossible to characterize and prioritize all of the different requests. So the section on looking at what's going on in the marketplace as your main driver to create the strategies necessary helps set the stage for strategizing, prioritizing, and getting things done.
Recently, I've noticed a lot of very specialty products hitting the market, you know, whether it's Apple iPhone products or we're looking at the personally named Coca-Cola. And I wondered if we're seeing a new era in product management that is waking up the customer base.
It's a really good question. I think it just depends on the speed with which the market is moving. If you think about consumer electronics, they tend to move a lot faster than companies that make industrial drill bits for oil well drilling. You know, the product that takes 5 years to develop and it's going to be around for 50 years versus a product that's going to take a year basically to develop and maybe around for 6 months to a year. So product people need to be cognizant of speed of market, all right? I was having a conversation with a woman who runs a product management organization here in New York. She's in a big media company. And it's really interesting how they've shaped their product organization. They have 20 people, but when you're in the media business and you produce a newspaper and everything else, news is moving at a very, very rapid pace. So the stateful nature of the physical paper is only as good as the news that was the day before. But if the news changes, it's almost like you turn on the television and you're seeing things happen. So those media companies have to move at that speed. And the product managers who work in that environment are a slightly different breed because of the fleet of foot and things like that. But there's something else that this woman really inspired me when I had lunch with her very recently. And it was that I said, what do you attribute your success to? And she said, customer insights. And I said, tell me more about that. And they said, you know, we have 20 product managers. We also have 20 customer insight people. And these are the people who feed on the street, observing readers, people who are, you know, whether they're walking down the streets of Manhattan looking at their device or on their tablet, whatever it is, they're consuming information at an amazing rate.
Right.
And so these product people need to be cognizant of what it is that's going on in that marketplace as opposed to somebody in a more industrial environment.
Well, now also with technology, I mean, I know from my own website that we now have a full understanding of user behavior.
Sure.
We can tell exactly how someone's using a product, what their income is, what age group, do they like leaves? I mean, it's just an incredible, it's an incredible time to be in your area of expertise because you have that real hard analysis.
Well, I think there are some challenges even in very, very fast-moving environments. The first thing is that if you're drawn as a product person into all of the day-to-day tactical actions, then you won't be able to pay attention to your product's business. And so well-run organizations have specialists, business specialists, whether it's a customer insights group or a market intelligence group or a strategic planning group or even a product pricing group that will allow for those specialty people to do the work that they need to do so the product management people can serve as the GM types or CEO types. They're the people who are stitching together all the different pieces and connecting the dots and looking at the business from a much more holistic perspective. So in the fast-moving world, we have to make sure that roles and responsibilities are really clear across the organization so that the product people can do what they need to do.
And final question. If I'm a C-suite executive watching this interview right now, and I have a product manager down the hall from me, what's your advice?
Interesting. I think it depends on where the product manager came from. In the desk reference, the introductory chapter is called The Accidental Profession. And it means that everybody who came into product came from a different place. I'm a finance guy by trade, all right? I fell into product management in my corporate life when I was working at AT&T. It wasn't on my list of things to do. So if a C-level executive says, I have this new product person, you really need to understand, where did the person come from? So each individual has their own strategic plan for their own development and the kind of work that they have to be able to do. So if you can understand what experience they have, where they need to be working, their objectives are, then you can create a path to help develop them over a period of time.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
He's Stephen Haines. He is the author of the Product Manager's Desk Reference. And for more information on this book and many more, please go to c-suitebookclub.com.